Good afternoon, or good evening, or good morning, wherever you may be. We'd really like to thank you for attending today. I'd like to extend a very warm welcome and thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us in what I'm hoping will be an enlightening and hopefully insightful discussion. Hopefully it will provide you with some good ideas and some good strategies to help you to get more value from your data. Before we begin, just a few housekeeping thoughts. Firstly, I'd like to just mention that if you have any questions during our discussion, that you put them into the question and answer session. We'll be watching for those. We'd like to try and make the discussion as interactive as possible. And so we'll make time for your questions a little bit later on in the discussion. If we don't get to any of those, then we will respond to you by email. Please note that, as you were likely told when you were invited to the session, that we will only communicate to you with you based on your consent, and your personal information will not be shared with any third parties or used for any other purpose. And if we do communicate with you, either ourselves or Ataccama, you are free to opt out of any further communication as we go along. Okay, so let's move on to the purpose of today's discussion. Today we're talking about the interesting topic of the data fabric and what it means for your organization. And as you may be aware, Gartner, in its recent technology report of new technologies for 2020, rated the data fabric as the number one new technology to watch. My name is Alan Raubenheimer. I'm the Managing Director of Data Horizons. I am a self-professed and unashamed data geek. I love data. I love working with it. I enjoy working with people who find new and innovative ways of dealing with data and solving business problems and bringing more value to their organizations through the use of data. I'm joined today by Marek Ovcacek, who is the Vice President of Platform Strategy for Ataccama. Ataccama has been consistently recognized in the past few years as a leading solution provider and player in the spaces of data governance, data quality management, and master data management. And they've also been recognized for their award-winning Ataccama One platform. Marek was at the forefront of formalizing what's known by Ataccama as the data quality fabric, and we'll see how that interacts with the data fabric as we have our discussion. And he is recognized as a thought leader on the modern data fabric. As a fellow lover of all things possible in data and technology, I'm really looking forward to exploring with Marek how we can learn more about the data fabric and how it might help our organizations to gain advantage from the data that we have. As mentioned, we would like to leave room for your questions because we want the discussion to be as pertinent and as interactive as possible. So please, as time permits, please put in your questions. They don't just have to be about the data fabric. They can be about data governance or data quality, master data management, any one of those topics, and we'll see how we can get to them as time permits. So Marek, hello, welcome. Thank you very much for making time out of your busy schedule for speaking with us. We look forward to the discussion with you.
Hi, Alan, and hi, everybody. Thank you for hosting the event today. It is wonderful to be working with companies like Data Horizons to help organizations become increasingly data-driven and achieve the full value of their data assets.
Good. So, Marek, just moving on to the subject of the data fabric. Perhaps you can tell us a little bit about yourself and about what you do with Ataccama, and then we can move into the subject.
Excellent. Thank you for that question. So I really like your description as a data geek. and it resonates with me because Ataccama, basically, we were founded by similar people. We were all data geeks at the beginning, and we were working on a different projects and delivering data management and governance solutions to different companies. You know, back in the day when everybody was building ODS and data warehouses, and as we were delivering that, we were always thinking how to improve on our best practices, security, scalability, speed of delivery, and such things. Now, out of that practice, we started to build our own tools when we figured out that the commercial available solutions are just not flexible enough or not scaling well enough to meet our needs. So we first started delivering tools around data quality or data quality related products. Back in the day, it was called Data Quality Center, and very soon expanded in a natural way to general high-speed data processing, master data management, reference data management, and data governance suite. Data governance suite in this case is kind of a newest big addition because we realized that everything is tied together with metadata, and to have proper governance over everything and automation, you need that. So what we did was actually building the data fabric before the concept of data fabric was even formalized. It was for us kind of a natural development of this space. We are very successful in delivering the best software. In my opinion, it's the best software for these solutions because we are speaking our customers' language. We are one of them. We are using our products to deliver solutions, and we are making sure that we are constantly improving our products so that the customers can spend less time messing with the technicalities and more time working with the data, as we all like.
Okay, thanks, Marek. So that's a good introduction. I just wanted to ask you, so Ataccama's solution is called Ataccama One. Does that mean you've got only one product? Because you mentioned a whole lot of moving parts in your discussion.
Well, it is and it isn't. The way that we're looking at Ataccama One means that we are delivering the whole suite of useful modules under one umbrella and as one integrated platform that ensures that although all of our modules can be used as standalone products and integrate to your company landscape, they are purposefully built to fill their role in a platform, and the best possible way to use them is inside the one platform. So
Okay.
imagine if you're interested in just some modules separately, the one platform is basically a blueprint telling you how that module will fit or it's best integrated to the rest of your technology stack. And we have a lot of customers using it that way, just starting with one and integrate it to their own kind of a concept of data fabric or whatever data management paradigm they are using. But if you are interested for more end-to-end solution, it is very easy to extend one module with others to deploy bigger part of the platform. So to recap, you can have each part separately and very easily integrate it to the rest of your stack, or you can use all of them nicely integrated together. And the way that we are envisioning it will give you basically architectural blueprint of where every component fits.
Okay, great. And I think that leads well into the subject of our webinar today, the data fabric and what it means for your organization. As we mentioned earlier, data fabric has been identified by Gartner as a top technology for 2022. And in its report, it says that by 2024, data fabric deployments will quadruple efficiency in data utilization while cutting human-driven data management tasks in half. Now that sounds very exciting, but it sounds like a really, really big order. And I'm sure many like me are wondering, is data fabric really, what is it really? And is it just another buzzword, or is it just another name for something that we already have? Or is it something that's going to be really expensive and complex to implement and be replaced by something in the future? So I think that's really what we want to get to in the meat of this discussion. If you wouldn't mind, give us some insight into what the data fabric really entails.
Yeah, so basically, data fabric is a concept that is saying there is a data management system that can deliver high quality data to whoever asks for a data, uh, uh, basically in a way that data fabric will understand the use case that you're asking for with all its implications. So implications about what should be in the data, what is the data format, what is the governance around the data set, what is this, in what speed do you need, and what is the security implications, and then dynamically direct you to the appropriate source of the data, or in some cases even transform the data for you. So in short term, you ask it for a data by describing your use case, and the fabric will deliver you the correct data set with all the implications. Now that sounds a bit like a magic, right? So it doesn't tell you how to build it. So to understand it a little bit more, if you look at it architecturally, data fabric is a design concept, how to build an integrated layer of the data and connected processes. So to explain it to in more understandable term, you can imagine data fabric as a self-driving kind of a governance layer that sits between your data sources and data consumers, and it provides data to the consumer at a speed, quality, and form required by the consumer. So, and consumer in this case can be user, or can be organization, or can be process, it can be API, it can be something automated as well. So to understand how data fabric is capable of doing this, we need to understand its kind of a building blocks. So you referred to Gartner earlier, for example, and when kind of a Gartner definition, they are describing how this process works by looking at what they call the key pillars of the data fabric, right? So in the key pillars of the data fabric, you imagine that data governance layer sits in the middle between your data, and the most important part of it starts right at the bottom, and that's augmented data catalog and knowledge graph. So that's the part uh, where you have all the metadata in one place. So imagine that you are gathering metadata from all your source systems and for all your connected processes, and you put it the metadata in a data catalog, and you put it and enhance that metadata and connect it to the different parts of your metadata tree in your knowledge graph. So imagine, for example, you are connecting to the data source, getting some basic information. You know, there's my tables, there's my structures of my files, data types in the tables. That's very basic. Now, when you have that, you can use what we call metadata activation to look at that metadata and try to infer additional information. So, for example, you have some kind of data glossary, right? Data glossary usually, or business glossary usually contains the business terms definition. For example, what is my customer? What it means to have an email address? What is the description? What is it used for, and so on. So metadata activation, uh, often aided by the AI processes from recommendation engines, we look at existing metadata and the structure of the data, infer, for example, where you have these business domains, right? And it connects them to the data catalog in a knowledge graph. So imagine the graph is, let's say you have a table with the attribute in a table, and it is connected to the as a relation to, let's say, your definition of a business domain, let's say customer number, right? So basically this process goes around and around. It's never-ending process. Every time you have new metadata, you try to infer new metadata from it, and it needs to be also automated, and your metadata needs to be in a form uh, of that both users and automated processes such as AI processes can understand. So that's why this bottom part, this knowledge graph and metadata is the most important. Now, the role of automation and artificial intelligence or machine learning are also key components because we want all the moving parts of the data fabric, especially when it comes to adding meaning to the data, improving its quality and enhancing value to be working automatically. So at the end of the data fabric, data must be ready to be consumed. Hence the focus on the word like active, dynamic, and automated. Now, once you have all that metadata in, right, imagine that you have this kind of a rich base of metadata, as much information about your sources as possible, including security, including the policies and all of that. You can basically, as a data consumer, ask the system to provide you a data set. Let's say I need my customer data for email campaign, right? And then that underlying layer activates, uh, kind of understands the description of your use case and starts searching for a metadata or about the data that you need. Once it finds the correct data sets, then it uses this data preparation and data delivery layer to construct the data pipeline. Basically, I need data from source A, from source B. Let's say join them together to provide your data set. It understands that I need, let's say, snapshot of that, so I don't need to stream it, or maybe in the future I will need to stream it, so it constructs the data pipeline a little bit differently. So once it has that, then orchestration and data ops layer takes that pipeline and starts providing you with the data, right? And the data is clean. The data has all the additional information on top of it, and also the data pipelines are reusable for the data consumers. Now, where we come in, and we are adding additional added value to that process, is that we are very good at providing data quality information and manipulating data based on the data quality information. So let's imagine that you have address information. Addresses you can format in thousands different ways, right? We understand that way we can detect which addresses are good, which addresses are not good, and based on that information, based on those patterns, we can fix them, right? So based on that, on the part of that automated data pipeline that provides you the data, can be basically automated, let's say, data quality evaluation and data quality remediation. Evaluation basically just tell you what is the quality of the data, and that is basically another metadata endpoint in your knowledge graph. And remediation or fixing or standardization, we can provide you with the better data than that is coming to the data mesh from the sources at the end. So that's kind of our vision of this whole data fabric.
Okay, so what you've just mentioned is then where the concept of the data quality fabric fits into the data fabric from an Ataccama perspective.
Yeah.
Now, clearly the goal, as you've mentioned, and by going through this Gartner pillars of the data fabric, is to create something that's as automated as possible. But that sounds like quite a tall order, because in my experience in working with organizations, many, if not most organizations, struggle with the fact that they've got lots of disparate technologies already in place. Would you say that that's one of the biggest challenges for organizations to be able to implement the type of data fabric that you were talking about?
Well, I would say yes. So basically, for organizations to realize the power of the data fabric solutions and to get real value from their data, it is usually a longer process, and it's equally dependent on the technology, but as well as an organization culture. So I've seen organizations that are data driven, and they have data driven culture that can construct the data fabric from the sets of essential modules. So for example, so this, as I mentioned, it is also possible for Ataccama. They just pick one module from Ataccama and then combine it with the others. Now, for other more traditional organizations, having solution that covers most of their data fabric needs, elegantly integrating in a single platform, either ideally the one which does not place massive technological hurdles between the moving parts, is the way to go. The other challenge is that most organizations face is that when it comes to consuming the data, there is still a significant amount of work to be done to ensure that the data which has now been integrated and stored makes sense and is of good enough quality so that it can be trusted. Sadly for many organizations, that part of the equation is still being managed manually. So so with our solutions, we can make sure that that part is also provided faster.
Yeah,
So to kind of a recap, it really depends on culture of the organization and how fast they can adapt, and also to sheer size of the organization, because you don't have to have everything in kind of a data fabric concept, but you want to have a way to kind of expand it as much as possible. But it is true that building data fabric requires some upfront investment, right?
yeah. Okay, so thank you very much for that. I think it's very clear to us that there will be challenges. The point you mentioned about data quality is absolutely, in my experience, I've seen that as well. Most organizations still struggle with that concept, and often data quality is dealt with. It's not dealt with as part of the overall solution, but is rather dealt with as a point type of solution, or it's left to the knowledge workers to address that. And what you've explained to us in terms of an end-to-end data fabric solution, would you say that the Ataccama one, so you've told us that Ataccama one will deal with that, but now does that mean that you just you just installed the Ataccama one and all of the moving parts are there automatically for you? It's already in place.
And this is a very good question, because basically it depends also on the culture. You can have all the moving parts of the data fabric, but if you don't use it in a correct way, uh, you will just continue using it differently. But that also fits some organizations. We are not there to force kind of a data fabric vision to anybody. Everybody has their own way of working with the data. But in general, Atacama Fabric basically provides you with a good starting point, with the integrated platform designed for data governance and data understanding through the catalog and business glossary, with the data quality management and master data management built in. But at the same time, uh, you can take any part of the Atacama platform, integrated with your landscape to as a standalone module when you are building your own data fabric. So whichever you choose, this is a type of flexibility that our customers kind of love about Atacama, right? Granted, a big portion of them start with a smaller part, and sooner discovers that having all of it integrated is a better way, and they tend to kind of add additional parts of our platform to the stack.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. I think let's take some time to see if there are any questions. I'm not sure. I'm not seeing any yet, but if I'd like to just remind the people in the audience just to please let us have your questions if you've got anything that you want to bring up. While we waiting for that, Marek, I know one of the common questions that comes up, because there's a lot been spoken of about the data fabric, but then you also have the concept of the data mesh. Would you be able to tell us what's the difference between those two? Are they the same thing, or is it totally different things?
Yeah, that's a good question, and later it comes up very often. So to understand it, first I need to explain a little bit about the data mesh. So data mesh is a data governance concept based on data democratization, where it says basically that uh, your domain data owners or domain data teams are owning their data and creating a data products out of it. So what this means basically, it's you are decentralizing the data ownership, but it doesn't have any implications on kind of a physical architecture underneath that. You need to still have some data infrastructure as a platform and as some governance on top of it for it to be working together. So, for example, your data product that your team is creating have some requirements of what kind of input and output interfaces it needs to have, so it works with the rest of the organization. There's requirements that it is self-contained, so it should also contain all of the underlying architecture and all of the storage, let's say, and that part is usually provided by the data infrastructure as a platform. Ideally, what you want here is that data infrastructure as a platform to be as good as possible. So most of your teams will choose to use it to create their data products. And with the data infrastructure as a platform, you have it usually connected to some kind of overlying governance that makes sure that your data products that different teams are creating are actually compatible. So because when you are putting them together, which I have actually on the next slide, you need to make sure that you can trust each previous product to be stable enough and provide you the data with in a correct form and correct quality and in a correct speed to for your data product to be working. Now, if that sounds familiar from our previous conversation about data fabric, it is because it is kind of intentional is nobody's telling you that you need data fabric to build your data mesh, and you absolutely don't need data fabric to build your data mesh. But basically, when you have distributed teams or decentralized teams building data product, the better kind of underlying what they call data infrastructure as a product or a self-serve data infrastructure with a self-serve governance on top of it, the better that solution will be, the less problems you will have. Because distributed teams, basically, if you don't have correct governance over whatever they are doing, you're creating what we call, governance debt, right? Every time somebody creates new data product, and it has a slightly different interface or its documentation in somewhere where you cannot find it, it is a problem. In the past, there was a problem with silos, right? Everybody was siloed, and we went to a centralization. Now we are decentralizing things again. Now the data fabric running beneath that is very good concept and very well established concept that will make sure that you are creating as little governance debt as possible, because it will ensure that your data is addressable, right? Your data product needs to be addressable, it needs to be stable in the when I need to find it and use it, it needs to be in the same location, right? It will ensure that it has a correct interfaces that are compatible with other data products, because it can create these dynamic data pipelines, and even in some cases self-heal this kind of connected data products, right? And with Ataccama, we are also ensuring quality. We are adding trustworthiness to that, right? How can I trust this data? If I get with my data product as part of the documentation, also kind of a data quality report, I can say, okay, I am very comfortable using this data product as an input for my data product, right? For my data set, for my use case.
Yes.
So this all comes together. So basic idea is the better your data management system is, the better your data mesh is going to work. And with data fabric as that management system, that underlying system that is kind of a self-serve system for the data people, you can ensure that you will run into less and less problems, right? And you absolutely need something like that. You don't want to end up doing data mesh and end up with the silos like we had before.
Yes. Yes.
We know that will not work, right? So yeah, so that's how they are working together. That's
Okay.
in general.
Excellent. Thank you. So I see we've got one question here, which I think we've sort of touched on, but maybe we can just reiterate it. The question is, Do you need a tool to implement a data fabric, and what can we do with our on-premise BI tools?
That is a very good question. So, in general, there is this understanding that there's probably not a single tool on the market that you will install in your organization and suddenly you have data fabric, right? It's kind of a concept how you should take your various tools in your data management space and your BI tools and all of that tooling and how it should work together. You definitely will need some of the tools that is described. Let's say in this pillars of data fabric, you know that you will need some metadata management system. You know that you will need to build knowledge graph on top of it and some recommendation engines that will understand that knowledge graph. Now, what that system will be, what those parts of the data fabric will be, it doesn't have to be part of the same tool. It doesn't have to be part of the same technology stack even. It just needs to work in a way that those tools are you can integrate them together and they can understand each other. In this case, when I'm saying understand, is mostly the most critical part is the metadata layer, right? If you want to use the metadata layer to drive the rest of your data fabric,
Mm-hmm.
let's say create reports automatically out of it, then your recommendation engines, your metadata activation engines, and your data processing pipeline engines will need to understand that metadata. And I've seen people, using various data catalog or open source metadata solutions, combine it with other open source pipelining solutions, building the data fabric together. Works pretty well. And also, I've seen organizations struggle because if you don't have correct culture, if things are moving too slow, it will never get, beyond proof of concept, right?
Yeah.
So what we are trying to do is we are trying to give you a kind of a template. This is the best way you can start building data fabric. By the way, we have all the tooling that you need, or majority of the tooling that you need for that. You can use it together. You can later switch it to a different tooling. You can enhance it, right? Nobody's telling you that you just have one recommendation engine. Usually in an organization, you have, tens, hundreds of different initiatives that are working as recommendation engines. That's where your data scientists are going to be very useful, right? Also for metadata activation or even the data delivery. You don't have to have one data delivery system, right? You can combine multiple different ETL tools to use that, whichever is good for different places, especially in the modern hybrid environments when you have a lot of the times in the big organizations you have multi-cloud environment, right? So you are not forced to use one engine, right? Let's say in Azure you can use Data Factory, in AWS you can use something else. Important thing is that the pipelines in that engine you can build them on top based on the information from your knowledge graph. And in general, that's how it goes through the whole technology stack. We are basically just giving you, this is our vision. You can extend it as you want, but this is how we would build it if it was our own.
But it sounds to me like the most essential components of it are the ability to ensure that your metadata is there, it's enriched, that you've got the knowledge graph, and that you can then create your data pipelines and your data quality management
Mhm.
components built on metadata rather than creating them based on purely just a technology.
Yeah, and if you want to start building any kind of a data fabric, the metadata layer is the most important. I would recommend starting with that. Data
Yeah,
catalogs, metadata management solutions, anything that you have. Most importantly, it needs to be automated. You cannot rely on the hundreds of people to keep your metadata in check, right? Which is the
yeah,
problem with the older metadata management solutions, right? You have a big project, you have hundreds of people mapping all your systems, and then project is done and we are good, right? We are not, because the data are changing constantly,
yes,
right? And if you don't have this automated, then it's just ongoing process where you need to basically have army of subject matter experts updating it. You don't want that. You want them to do something meaningful with the data in the organization. So you're right. So if you want to start building any kind of data fabric, start with the metadata management system. That's my recommendation.
Excellent. Okay, well, I think that's basically where we are at. I don't see any further questions coming up, and we've been going for 40 minutes. So, and that was really the time that we set ourselves. We didn't want to make this a long and boring discussion, and I think what's come out of the discussion today and some of the insights that you've given us is really quite exciting. I think it's whet our appetites for us to go back to our organizations, take a closer look at our own data architecture in terms of how we are creating pipelines for serving data, and see how we can align to the data fabric. So I think that's been a really, really worthwhile discussion, and I'd like to thank you very much for your insights today, Marek.
Thanks for hosting this event. It is wonderful to have the opportunity to speak at this with the people who understand the concepts.
Yeah, so what I'd like to invite those who've joined us today is, if you've got any further questions, please feel free to reach out to us. You can look at the Ataccama website if you would like to learn a little bit more about how Ataccama is implementing this concept of the self-driving data engine or data fabric, because I think there's a lot of really interesting things that you could glean from that. And once again, thank you very much, Marek, and thank you for those who joined us today. We hope you have a good day further on and a good evening. And from us, thank you and goodbye.
Thanks. See you next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.